A sword forged for the Tsar soon is turned against him, severing the old empire in the name of revolution. Yet enemies remain, not without, but within, and so the blade turns on its wielder. Then, as a new world order is born in the fires of war, the sword dutifully serves its masters, cutting down foes left, right, and center. Over time it has changed its wielder, its name, even its shape, but not its purpose. Strike to kill. I'm talking about the Soviet secret police. Welcome to Season 1 of TimeGhost Cold War coverage in our series War to War, where we cover the events of the decade after World War II that brought man from the brink of destruction to the threshold of the stars. I'm Spartacus Olsson. Before we begin, there is one thing left to address. Every incarnation of the Soviet secret police also ran foreign espionage, and to great success, from the Tsarist Okhrana's Paris safe houses to the KGB's worldwide residencies. But today, we stay mainly on the home front. If you want to know more about Soviet foreign espionage, specifically regarding the Soviet bomb, check out our previous video. It's just about that. But let us begin. The roots of the formidable Soviet security state stretched back deep into the 19th century. After a wave of assassination attempts against Tsar Alexander II in 1866, again in 1879, and a third time in 1880, the imperial regime faces a reckoning. The result? A new Department of State Police. And yet, Alexander II is assassinated in 1881. So, an imperial decree by Alexander III on the 14th of August 1881 establishes the security law, laying the legal groundwork and significantly empowering the young state police, including administrative arrests, search detentions, and exiles. Out of this apparatus grows the infamous Okhrana, meaning security bodyguard or protection in Russian. But the public frequently uses a nickname, Okhranka, the K representing a diminutive. They function less as a single, formal agency, and Okhrana comes to denote an emerging system of specialized security police institutions and regional bureaus with a variety of names. Their purpose is simple: protect the emperor and the empire at all costs. Soon, the agencies refine their tradecraft, deep infiltration, recruiting informants to penetrate revolutionary groups, and employing agents provocateurs to entrap would-be rebels. They don't just operate at home. The Okhrana sets up shop in Paris in 1884 to track down émigré revolutionaries. Surveillance becomes systematic, with the infamous perlustration, the interception and reading of private mail, now routine. Then comes the 1905 revolution, another shock to the system. It highlights the regime's weaknesses against mass unrest. The state police go into overdrive, dramatically boosting funding, ramping up counter-revolutionary crackdowns, expanding provincial security offices, refining infiltration and surveillance, and significantly increasing administrative exile for political opponents. In other words, the Russian government doubles down. But some within its rank already doubt this course, such as Police Department Director Lopukhin, who warns in 1904. Police repression designed to root out sedition was driving a wedge between the educated layers of society and the government. It is hard for him to not tremble at the ease with which a popular revolt can erupt and spread in Russia. It will be impossible to stifle it without bloodbath. As it turns out, in 1917, not even a bloodbath can halt the revolutionary tide. Years of unresolved conflicts and the trauma of World War I culminate with an end to 370 years of Tsarist rule. Now, the power lies with the Bolsheviks under Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov, or Lenin. But their grip is slipping in the face of yet more revolts and opposition from all sides. Lenin makes a stark calculation. Terror is needed to hold power. On December 20th, 1917, the first Soviet secret service is born, the Cheka, the All-Russian Extraordinary Commission for Combating Counter-Revolution and Sabotage. The Okhrana not only fail in their original purpose, they also leave the Cheka a fleshed-out playbook on repression and control. The methods designed by Tsarists will now be used against them. Lenin does not pull any punches. In his own words, the state is an instrument for coercion. We want to organize violence in the name of the interests of the workers. In that spirit, the Cheka is granted immense power and allowed to act without reference to law and the supervision of any other institutions, bar Lenin himself. Its purpose? To stop and liquidate counter-revolutionary and diversion activities, to put on trial in the Revolutionary Tribunal those who had committed sabotage acts and the counter-revolutionaries, and to develop methods for fighting them. At its head sits Felix Dzerzhinsky, a longtime Bolshevik who learned the methods of the old Okhrana firsthand in Tsarist prisons. Dzerzhinsky is a brutal workaholic nicknamed Iron Felix. His words described the Cheka method spot on. We have no concern for justice at this hour. We are at war, and the fight is to the death. The Cheka starts small, but the ongoing revolution fuels its growth. Within a year, it's national, numbering between 200,000 and 280,000 by 1920, while local chiefs act with terrifying autonomy. This already overshadows the Imperial Okhrana by miles, if not light years, with at most around 1,100 active personnel. After an assassination attempt on Lenin in August 1918, terror is accelerated. The Red Terror Decree of September 5, 1918 provides Dzerzhinsky with the means of proper war. He can make use of summary executions, and that he does. The Cheka represses opposition parties, targets kulaks, relatively wealthy peasants targeted as class enemies by the Bolsheviks, and those linked to imperial remnants or plots. In the first 2 months alone, at least 10,000 to 15,000 are executed, showing rapid escalation. It brutally enforces war communism, seizing grain and suppressing strikes. The scale of violence is vast. Civil war executions could reach up to 250,000, potentially exceeding battlefield deaths, once more vastly beyond the Okhrana. Economically, it seizes foodstuffs and establishes concentration camps for forced labor, an early stage of the Soviet Gulag system. While the focus of the Cheka is mainly internal, it is not just that. In 1920, the formal Foreign Department, INO, is founded. Its goal is to monitor the enemies of communism and uncover foreign plots. Now, foreign surveillance becomes an institutionalized action. But by early 1922, the times are changing. The Civil War is almost won, and war communism gives way to the new economic policy, shifting emphasis to socialist legality and state building. Mounting opposition, both inside and outside the Communist Party, targets the unchecked ruthlessness. These pressures, along with the new political climate, lead to the Cheka's dissolution on February 6, 1922. In its stead, the GPU, the State Political Directorate, emerges. But in reality, little changes. Though a new special assembly, the secret police keep their power using administrative measures to sidestep the courts. Repression simply continues under a new name. The apparatus, personnel, and Dzerzhinsky remain. The Cheka secured Bolshevik victory through systematic terror. It wasn't a hidden force, but a visible, organized terror, creating a template of permanent emergency rule, a template now at the disposal of the GPU. But the GPU isn't long for this world. The creation of the USSR in 1922 necessitates an all-union body. In November 1923, the GPU becomes the OGPU, the Unified State Political Directorate, with jurisdiction across all republics. This cements its position from the notorious Lubyanka headquarters in Moscow. It develops specialized departments, including crucial foreign operations. Dzerzhinsky's death in 1926 hands the OGPU to Vyacheslav Medzinsky, but its mission barely changes: protect communism at all costs. In 1930, the Chief Administration of Camps, or Glavnoye Upravlenie Lagerei, Gulag, is created under the OGPU. The camps, now centrally coordinated, are the final stop for many enemies of the Soviet regime. Official tallies put camp deaths at around 120,000 between 1930 and 1934, a grave underrepresentation of reality, although by how much exactly is impossible to say. The barracks filled with kulaks as part of a central campaign against landowning traitors of communism, clergy and Ukrainians who resisted collectivization during the Holodomor, the man-made famine that devastated Ukraine at its peak in 1932-33. OGPU officers funnel hundreds of thousands into the expanding gulags through their intelligence sweeps. During the 2-year campaign of dekulakization, the OGPU shoots roughly 20,000 kulaks and consigns another 1.8 million people to penal colonies and the gulag it administers. At the same time, the Holodomor claims an estimated 3.3 to 3.9 million lives, mostly Ukrainians, staining the OGPU's hands with yet more blood as its grain seizures and repression plays a central role. The OGPU has demonstrated without a shadow of a doubt that they are willing to kill in the name of maintaining order and the party line. All the while, Henryk Grigorievich Yagoda is the real leader of the OGPU behind Menjinsky's desk, tightening professional discipline and surveillance of party elites. It is during this time the OGPU finds itself in a changed environment. By 1929, Joseph Stalin stands unchallenged at the helm of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Having already removed rivals, Leon Trotsky, the most famous, he decides in 1934 that further restructuring and purges are needed. With OGPU boss Menjinsky dying, Stalin seizes the moment to fold the semi-independent OGPU into one police commissariat he can pack with loyalists like Henryk Yagoda, purge the lingering Trotskyists, Chekists, and bring the entire coercive machine under his personal command. In essence, Stalin believes that building socialism would sharpen class conflict, justifying harsh repression and mass terror against perceived enemies to protect the revolution. Towards that end, on July 10, 1934, the OGPU is dissolved. Its power, its personnel, and its functions are absorbed into a newly reorganized All-Unions People Commissariat for Internal Affairs, the NKVD. The NKVD already existed before, but then it was only responsible for regular police and prisons, and was even dissolved for a while in 1930. Now it's back, bigger than ever. This giant new ministry now controls not just state security, but also regular police, border guards, and the vast swelling gulag system. The administrative tool of repression, the Special Assembly, continues to sidestep the legal system. The first head of this expanded NKVD is, no surprise here, Henryk Yagoda, the former deputy head of the OGPU. Yagoda oversees the initial wave of purges intensified dramatically after the assassination of Sergei Kirov in December 1934, a critical pretext for cracking down on perceived enemies. However, Yagoda, despite being a seasoned Chekist, provides insufficient ruthlessness for the escalating terror Stalin envisions. For the first 2 years, the purges Stalin has in mind failed to deliver. While the NKVD has been busy, it focuses on individual leading party members, government officials, and opposition leaders. They are usually quickly dispatched after mock trials, maintaining, at the very least, a veneer of legality. For the most part, however, the purges still rely on arbitrary and secret procedure devoid of any form of legality. In September 1936, Yagoda is replaced by Nikolai Yezhov, and he is the man Stalin has been waiting for. The purge changes form. Now, mass operations appear. By mass operations, we mean the campaigns against so-called kulaks and counter-revolutionary elements, against Germans, Poles, Iranians, and other nationalities, and against socially harmful elements, including beggars, prostitutes, criminals, and the unemployed. The victims were the ordinary, non-privileged, or disgraced members of the Soviet population. And with mass operations come quotas that need to be fulfilled. The terror of 1934 to 1936 becomes the Great Terror, akin only to the Red Terror we talked about earlier, yet dwarfing even it in scale and brutality. The period known as the Yezhovshchina extrajudicial troikas, 3-person panels with one NKVD member, rubber-stamped death sentences. There is no room for mercy, as Rukadze, then the NKVD head in Gagra, tells his deputy Vasilyev in July 1937. He who doesn't beat is himself an enemy of the people. and together with a statement from an NKVD interrogator. If an arrestee does not confess to terroristic activity, then he has simply not yet been fully unmasked. The picture of an NKVD emerges that knows the charged are guilty and uses any method necessary, oftentimes brutal torture, to extract a confession. The scale is horrific. According to their own records, in 1937 the NKVD arrests 779,000 people and shoots 353,000 of them. In 1938 it arrests a further 593,000 and executes 329,000. A total of roughly 1.6 million arrests and 682,000 shootings, close to 1,000 victims every single day. Behind those firing squads, the prison camp system, also run by the NKVD, balloons. Gulag populations jumped by 175,000 in 1937 and another 321,000 in 1938, while another 615,000, roughly, detainees in 1937 and 235,000 in 1938 are exiled to penal colonies in Siberia and elsewhere. Whole families are caught in the blast. 18,000 wives of traitors are jailed and their children classified Tsiri, languish in grim orphanages. The military isn't spared either, with 40,000 members persecuted, 500 high-ranking officers among them. Of those 500, 412 are shot and 29 died during interrogations. There is also an ethnic element to the madness. Notably, about 150,000 Poles pay the price for being Polish. Eventually, the system consumes its traitors. The very NKVD cadre that carried out the terror become targets. Stalin blames Yezhov and local NKVD leaders for excesses. The purge has become centrally authorized chaos. That is why, in December 1938, Lavrenti Beria replaces Yezhov, who is later executed. Beria's arrival partly curbs mass terror and causes some internal reform. Yet these grim NKVD ledgers do not tell the whole story. Parallel troikas, special boards, civilian courts, and local police kept separate or fragmentary records. Historians therefore debate the grand totals, with arrest estimates ranging between 3.5 million and 20 million, and execution figures between 500,000 and 7 million. Recent archival research now judges the lower end, around 3.5 million detentions and 700,000 deaths, nearest the grimmest truth. The Great Terror has transformed the Soviet Union. The Great Terror may also be thought of as the transition from Marxism-Leninism, a system of authoritarian collective leadership enforced by state terror, to Stalinism, a despotic personal autocracy in which subordinates were expected to obey without question and never knew, in Nikita Sergeyevich Khrushchev's words, whether the end of the day would find them in their office or in a cell. The purges, particularly under Yezhov, succeed in just that, forging total obedience through unprecedented terror. But they also cripple vital military and intelligence capacity on the eve of the Second World War. With the attack of the Soviet Union on Poland in 1939, the NKVD adds further horrors to its list of achievements. Most famously, the Katyn massacre in April and May 1940, when some 22,000 to 25,000 Polish officers, clergy, and intellectuals are murdered in cold blood. However, with the rest of Europe still at war by February 1941, the Soviet leadership decides yet another change is in order. The rationale? Stalin reorganized the security services in response to the new circumstances. The huge, unwieldy NKVD was divided into three parts. Military counterintelligence was transformed to the NKO, Defense Commissariat under the military. A new organization, the NKGB, State Security Commissariat, became responsible for foreign intelligence and ran domestic counterintelligence, among other things. At the same time, the NKVD remains, but now it is solely responsible for the Gulag system, POW camps, and some troops. A change that lasts merely 5 months. When Nazi Germany invades the Soviet Union on June 22, 1941, Stalin has a rethink. He believes the monolithic NKVD is better suited to organize a Soviet retreat. So the change is reversed on July 17, 1941, and in the following days. Charged with securing the Red Army's rear, the NKVD becomes a catch-all counterintelligence, partisan supervision, sabotage detachments. Gulag and POW administration, and the armed blocking units that shoot deserters under Stalin's no-retreat order. Its brutality is immediate. Radio mines detonated in abandoned cities and prison massacres in eastern Poland and the Baltic that leave up to 100,000 inmates dead rather than in German hands. As the tides of war ebb and flow, by 1943, after the Battle of Stalingrad ends with a Soviet victory on February 2, 1943, Stalin once more has a rethink. He reinstitutes his changes from early 1941. Under the NKO, the military counterintelligence branch of the new structure, SMERSH, from Smert Spionam, death to spies, emerges. Its core mission is military counterintelligence, in short. The agency, which had been created by Stalin to liquidate counter-revolutionaries and those suspected of collaboration with the Nazis. SMERSH's work involves screening servicemen, operating behind front lines, and conducting intense interrogations. A major undertaking is the infiltration of returning Soviet personnel and civilians from occupied territories. And just like the Cheka, or the NKVD, it brings fear to the hearts of the enemy and Soviet soldiers alike. Oh, this fatal word SMERSH. Everyone froze from fear when he heard it. Nikolai Nikulin, World War II veteran, 2007. We fought not for the motherland and not for Stalin. We had no choice. The Germans were in front of us and SMERSH was behind. Elena Bonner, World War II veteran, widow of academician Andrei Sakharov, 2010. As the war ends in the West in May and in the East in August 1945, the Soviet secret police organs leave a gruesome toll, and no one is spared, even Red Army generals. Between 1941 and 1945, 47 of them are executed or die in labor camps. 472,000 servicemen are charged and sentenced under tribunals, 217,000 to death by firing squad. Added are the hundreds of thousands sent to gulags, German POWs and suspicious Soviet returnees alike. 5.5 million are processed by SMERSH alone, with some scholars going as high as 10 million in their estimates. Similarly, the figures of sentenced servicemen and executions vary. Not to mention the likely vast number of unreported cases, deserters shot, civilians massacred, POWs tortured, and much more. In conclusion, SMERSH is arguably very effective in enforcing control and security through ruthless repression and a pervasive climate of fear. However, this effectiveness is inseparable from a high human cost. The end of the war also brings an end to the current structure once more, belatedly. In spring 1946, Stalin decides the NKGB becomes the MGB, and SMERSH and other parts of the NKO are dissolved and integrated into the MGB, so military and civilian counterintelligence once more sit under one agency. The NKVD is also renamed to MVD, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and continues to control the Gulag and POW camp system as well as managing regular police work. This is part of a broader change. All commissariats are renamed to Ministry. And at the head of the MGB stands Viktor Abakumov, the architect of SMERSH. Crucially, Abakumov, now MGB minister, continues to report directly to Stalin, just as he did as head of SMERSH. This isn't an end, but a rebadging. Key SMERSH officers move with Abakumov, taking up critical posts within the MGB. The system of pervasive control and investigation is maintained, simply under a new name and within a consolidated structure, answerable personally to the leader. As former allies are turned into rivals and then enemies, it is the MGB that protects Soviet interests on the dawn of a new Cold War. Domestically, the MGB is the instrument of Stalin's paranoia, evident in the creation of conspiracy narratives to justify repression. In Stalin's mind, there are still plenty of enemies within. There are two notable examples, the Doctor's Plot and the Leningrad Affair. The Leningrad Affair begins before the end of the war and with the end of the siege of Leningrad on January 27, 1944, the longest siege in modern history, lasting 872 days. In its wake, the local leadership, who had been isolated and forcibly independent from Moscow, become national heroes. Their subsequent success and public admiration are thorns in Stalin's side. There is also an undercurrent that is much older, Leningrad, or St. Petersburg, versus Moscow as the political and economic center of the USSR, or Russia. The result is the Leningrad Affair, lasting from 1949 to 1952, in which the Leningrad leaders are branded separatists and economic saboteurs and arrested. The MGB concocts the trumped-up charges and the propaganda supporting them. In the end, 23 top officials are executed and hundreds of cadres and their families sent to camps or exile, crippling the USSR's third-largest party machine. The crackdown freezes any tentative plans for administrative and economic decentralization and retightens Kremlin's authority over the provinces, which is precisely what Stalin wants. It also erases Stalin's previously favored successors, Alexei Kuznetsov and Nikolai Voznesensky, leaving a power vacuum that just waits to erupt. Once more, the MGB has ensured that everyone toes Stalin's line and no one else, and they will do so again at the doctor's plot. In January 1953, Soviet papers blare that a group of Kremlin physicians have confessed to plotting the slow murder of top leaders on orders from Western intelligence and international Jewry. Stalin himself orchestrates the affair. He wants to extract confessions, something the MGB knows a lot about, and use the result to begin another wide-ranging and brutal purge of the party leadership, specifically Jewish members and the Soviet Union as a whole. For a moment, those in the party leadership hold their breath. Will this be another great terror, leaving hundreds of thousands dead traitors? But then nature intervenes. Stalin dies on March 5, 1953, before the trials can take place. His plans are quickly cast aside. However, his death also throws the Soviet leadership into turmoil, unleashing the pent-up rivalries and the mentioned power vacuum. In the following months, the Soviet elite engages in a tense power struggle. Beria, as head of the NVD and previously NKVD, and one of the leading Soviets vying for control in a troika or triumvirate, reincorporates the MGB into the NVD, recreating the NKVD in all but name. But then he is executed in December 1953. After his death, Nikita Khrushchev and Georgy Malenkov remain as the two individuals with the most power, and the decision is made to, yet again, separate and consolidate state security functions under a new body. In 1954, that part of the NVD becomes the KGB. The KGB will serve the Soviet Union as sword and shield for decades to come, protecting the USSR from enemies from all sides, inside and outside. It will continue to commit atrocities in the names of protecting communism and prove, at times, exceptionally capable. It is the KGB that forms our contemporary conception of the Soviet secret police, fighting with the CIA abroad and maintaining strict adherence to the party line at home. As we have learned today, that is not the whole story, and the KGB is the result of decades of name-changing, institutional engineering, and changes of leadership. Born in Russian imperial times with the same purpose, safeguarding the status quo at all costs, revolution purges and World War II have created a machine of repression, control, and persecution. Brutally efficient in its aim, the KGB will use the tried and tested methods for the years to come. When the Cold War ends in Western victory, Moscow's secret police will at first be stunned and crippled, but it will not stay down for long. Reformed as the FSB in Russia, they will resume their trade of espionage, disinformation, terror, and murder abroad and at home. A bare decade after the demise of the Soviet Union, one of their agents will rise to lead Russia with a poisonous iron fist. In 2025, the legacy of the Okhrana, the Cheka, OGB, NKVD, MGB, and KGB continues to hold the world in fear, leading millions into suffering and claiming the lives of hundreds of thousands in the conflicts it seeds. If you want to find out how, where, and why the KGB operates during the ongoing Cold War, tune in here on the War to War series, where we at TimeGhost follow the developments of a time that shaped today more than any other. It is only through your participation that we can cover history this way, so if you want to join, consider becoming a member of the TimeGhost Army at patreon.com or timeghost.tv. Excelsior!